So, I was minding my own plate, sitting down for dinner in the city's top restaurant in my cutest little black dress, and having a lovely time with my boyfriend when, out of nowhere, he goes off on me. "Did you really have to get the pork starter?" he said, disgust in his eyes and his voice a little too loud for my comfort. I wanted to diffuse the situation. I wanted him to calm down, but he just kept going. "I mean, you could do with some salad, you know. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately?" he exclaimed, disgust now dripping in his voice as well. "Have you even tried to use that scale I gifted you last month? Or did you manage to break that with your fat ass too?" Eric, I stammered, trying to defend myself, but when he threw his napkin onto the table and stood up, I could only stare with my mouth open at how much hate was coming off of him. It was so embarrassing. Not only was my boyfriend fat-shaming me, he was doing it so everyone could hear. There was a hush around us, as if people stopped what they were doing to watch what happened next with bated breath. When I looked around, everyone in that restaurant was looking at me. Some giggling with ridicule, while others were staring with pity. "Eric, please calm down. You're embarrassing me," I pleaded. "Embarrassing you?" he erupted, laughing sarcastically. "You're embarrassing me. I'm rich. I'm hot. I'm a 10, bro. And you're supposed to be my girlfriend? I mean, look at you. When we started dating, you looked like a model. All you do is eat now. It's just ridiculous. I can't take you anywhere because I'm ashamed of what my friends would say. You sweat, you stink, and you barely fit in my Lambo anymore. Like, damn, bro, I didn't sign up for raising a cow." I burst out crying. I couldn't even think anymore. I was embarrassed, I was hurt, and all the hateful insults he hurled at me broke me down. It was an ugly cry. My face was a mess of tears, sweat, and snot. I was never a big crier, but when I did, Eric would always comfort me. But that night, he couldn't even so much as look at me. It was as if he found me too ugly. Instead of his usual response to my crying, that night, my crying made him detest me. "I'm done," he finally announced. "Don't follow me home. Don't text me. Don't ever talk to me again." He turned to leave, but right before he reached the door, he turned back around. "And don't expect me to keep paying for dance school," he yelled, before lowering his voice to a more menacing tone. "You're not going back this year. You could never fit into your tights at this rate anyway." At that, he grabbed his coat from the stunned receptionist and slammed the restaurant door behind him. In a second, the deafening silence that engulfed the restaurant was gone. Tables were abuzz with conversation again as if nothing had happened. I heard "fat chick" once or twice. Obviously, I was the subject of many conversations that night. Some people came to comfort me. A waiter tried to see if I was all right, and the manager came to say that the meal had already been paid for by another guest. I couldn't care less, though. Everything was a blur to me. My life was crumbling in front of me, and I was unraveling. Eric broke my heart, and he took my dream away from me. I worked so hard to get into dance school, and the only reason I declined the scholarship offer from my first choice of school was because he insisted on paying for the more expensive one. Now I was alone, out of school, and without a roof over my head. I wiped the tears from my eyes, and to no one in particular, I said, I was eating for two. I had to go back home. I lived with my parents while I waited tables and worked at my parents' convenience store. I hustled online, opening an Etsy shop and going into dropshipping. In a year, I was able to open my own dance studio. In less time than that, I gave birth to my son, and I named him Liam. And although his green eyes and chocolate curls would sometimes remind me of his dad, his smile brought me back to life. The way he would light up whenever he saw me rescued me from my darker days. As a mother, I thought I was supposed to protect him. It turned out he was my protector instead. It didn't take long for my little studio to attract kids from our little town. They came in all different but equally cute shapes and sizes. Sometimes a girl or two would be ashamed to sign up, saying they weren't sure they could dance because they were chubby. But I always made sure to instill in my students that neither size nor looks could ever eclipse talent and hard work. And so, as a class, we all worked hard together. I trained them in dance, and they saved me by giving me a purpose. One day, my mom woke me up with her squeals. I rushed down the stairs, baby Liam in my arms, thinking someone had gotten killed. I saw my mom standing behind the kitchen counter, her eyes wide and a hand on her mouth as she pointed at her laptop screen. "What?" I said, trying to calm the recently woken Liam down. "Your video! Look!" was all my mom said. As a year-end project, my kids and I filmed a dance routine we'd been working on all year. We uploaded it on my hastily created YouTube page the night before. Last time I checked, it had 33 views. 1 or 2 from each of my students' parents, and most probably, the rest was from my mom and dad. So you can imagine the goosebumps that ran through my entire body when I saw that it had over 100,000 views the morning after. Before the week ended, it had gotten 42 million views. I saw it shared on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. People were duetting clips of it on TikTok. Eventually, the local news stations came knocking. People gushed at how cute and talented my students were. They admired how inspiring they were. When they heard about mine and Liam's story, it fanned the frenzy even more. People wanted to get to know me, my tragedy. It was uncomfortable at first, but eventually I made sure to focus on what I gained instead of what I lost. And what I truly gained was Liam and self-esteem, and beyond that, self-sufficiency. Because I turned all that fame and attention into my hustle. My Etsy shop had never done better. The numbers were so astronomical, I had to open up a small workshop. My mom and dad helped, and I ended up employing some of the single mothers in my hometown. My dance studio was so popular, I could barely take a breath in between classes. We kept unloading videos, and before long, we had 28 million subscribers. But at the end of the day, I always made sure Liam never grew up like his dad. I taught him to never look at my life for its shiny things. I taught him to love deeper than the surface. 16 years later, my realtor opened the door to the massive marble-filled mansion. But before we got further than the foyer, a ragged, homeless-looking man stopped us. "Back again, Eric? Seriously?" said Liz to the man, and then to me she muttered apologetically, "Oh, he's the current tenant, Ms. Gwynn. He used to own the house, but he lost everything from gambling and racking up too much debt. Lived the rock star life without working for it." She eyed Eric with a judging eye, looking him up and down as she continued with even more contempt in her voice. "And he wasn't supposed to be here during the showing, but I guess he can't afford to go anywhere." Liz waved her hand in front of her face and turned away from Eric, her nose turned up at the man's stench. "And take a shower once in a while," she said under her breath. At the mention of my last name, I saw Eric's eyes grow big with realization. He looked me up and down and shouted, "Didn't I tell you to never come here again?" "How dare you?" said Liz, standing between me and Eric. "You'll have to excuse him. My firm's tried to get around this issue, but it's been difficult. He's a year behind on his rent. We tried to evict him, but he keeps getting back in. He's very disgruntled and tries to ruin any sale we try to make. Sorry about this, Ms. Gwynn. I can show you other properties that—" "I'll take it," I said before she could finish. "And just call me Tina. I think we're going to be good friends." I took Liz's hand in mine and looked into her eyes. "If I pay in cash, can we move in today?" For a second, Liz looked like she couldn't understand what she just heard, and then she said, Yes, I'm sure we can make that work." "Renee," I called out. My assistant appeared with a suitcase, which she opened to show Liz the money. From the corner of my eye, I saw Eric's jaw drop. I can't begin to explain how satisfying that was for me. I played it cool and instead directed my attention towards Liz. "So," I said, "it's all there, but count it anyway, just to be sure." Liz looked at the money, at Renee, and then me. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I can show you other properties, you know, much newer and without—" She glared at Eric. "Unsightly, inconvenient features in them?" I smiled a warm smile at Liz. I'm sure. All right then, said Liz, as long as you're fully aware that you will be shouldering the cost of the existing tenant's missed payments, and his lease won't be up for another year. Are you all right with that? That's perfectly fine. I'll make sure Eric pays back his debts one way or another, I said, giving Eric a quick glance. And the house is in a great school district. It'll be a perfect fit for my son. Liz took the suitcase from Renee, handed me the keys, but didn't let go of it. Last chance, she said. Are you sure? I am, I told Liz. Your funeral, she chuckled, shooting Eric another disgusted look before dropping the keys onto my palm. Anything I can do to help with the move, then? Oh, no, Liz, but thanks, I said. Renee's got everything covered. My assistant rattled off instructions into her earpiece, and not a minute later, an army of men burst into the house with my possessions. Eric's eyes went so big, it looked as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. Painting after grand painting passed us in the hall, and bespoke designer furniture began to crowd the once sparse halls of the house. A team of interior design professionals shouted instructions over the din of activity, and in the time it took for me to sign Liz's preliminary paperwork, the house was ready to move into. Just then, my son walked in. Absolute perfection in his custom navy suit and tan leather shoes. He was scratching at his tie, telling me he was still uncomfortable in it. I don't understand why I had to dress up today, Mom. Bit weird for moving into a house, he chuckled. Liz clutched her pearls. Oh my, she said. Isn't he handsome? This is my son Liam, I said to Liz, while my gaze fixed on Eric, who looked like he was about to have a stroke. To him, I imagine it was like seeing a much better version of his old self. Renee suddenly said, Just reminding you of your 1 o'clock interview with Forbes, ma'am. Which car would you prefer us to keep here, by the way? Leave the Bugatti and the Tesla here. The rest, take them back to storage. I saw Eric's eyes widen even further, and I couldn't hold back my laughter any longer.